The sun rose over the town not with a gentle kiss, but with the relentless baking heat of a new day. It painted the sprawling township in hues of rust, dust, and faded plastic, a tapestry of resilience against a hard blue sky. In a small, corrugated iron shack at the end of a dirt road, where the smell of yesterday's cooking fire mingled with the ever-present scent of earth, 19-year-old Elara Mbeki was already awake. For her, the dawn was not a promise, it was a summons to another day of invisible labor. The story of Elara was a quiet tragedy, a melody of loss played on the strings of daily hardship. 5 years ago, a minibus accident on the highway had stolen the lives of her parents, Thomas and Sarah Mbeki. They had been good people, her father a respected teacher at the local school, her mother a nurse at the clinic. They had left behind not wealth, but a legacy of kindness, a small but sturdy house, and a heartbroken daughter. Into that void of grief had stepped her father's sister, Aunt Patricia. Patricia Mbeki was a woman carved from bitterness and ambition. She had always viewed her brother's gentle contentment with a mixture of pity and contempt. Seeing his death not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity, she had arrived with a suitcase and 2 daughters in tow, declaring herself Elara's rightful guardian. The court, overwhelmed in seeing a blood relative, had agreed, blind to the cold calculation in Patricia's eyes. The grant meant for Elara's care and the ownership of the house, the finest on the street, swiftly became Patricia's property. And Elara became the help. The house itself was a paradox. It was a symbol of a better life, a concrete block structure with real windows and a solid roof, a castle amidst shacks. But for Elara, it was her gilded cage. She was banished to a tiny, airless room at the back, once a storage space, while Aunt Patricia's daughters, Chloe and Bianca, shared the proper bedroom. Her world shrank to the confines of the yard, the chore of beating dust out of carpets, the endless cycle of washing and ironing, the careful polishing of her cousin's shoes until they shone like obsidian. Chloe and Bianca, only a year and 2 years older than Elara, respectively, were perfect reflections of their mother. They had learned to wear their privilege like a second skin, their laughter often echoing at Elara's expense. Their lives were a whirl of hair appointments at the salon in town, shopping trips to the mall, and flirtations with local boys who owned beat-up cars. They were kept pristine, their hands soft, their ambitions focused on one thing: marrying well and escaping the township for good. Elara was the engine that maintained their comfort, a ghost in the background they scarcely acknowledged, unless to issue an order. Elara's only escape was her art. In stolen moments, hidden in her tiny room or under the shade of the lone struggling tree in the yard, she would create. Using discarded telephone wire, beads, and whatever she could find, she crafted intricate sculptures, animals, people, abstract shapes that spoke of a world of color and beauty far removed from her own. She would sell them sometimes, furtively, to a curious tourist or a shopkeeper in town, hiding the few precious rand away, a secret fund for a freedom she could barely dare to imagine. On this particular morning, the heat was already stifling. Elara was on her knees, scrubbing the concrete step of the front porch, the coarse bristles of the brush scraping against her already raw knuckles. The sound of a car engine, a deep, throaty purr, utterly alien to the sputtering taxis and old cars of the township, made her look up.
A vehicle, so sleek and black it seemed to absorb the sunlight, was navigating the narrow, potholed road with a hesitant, expensive grace. It was a BMW X7, a machine of such blatant wealth it looked like it had arrived from another planet. It rolled to a stop directly outside the Mbeki house. The dust, unsettled by its tires, swirled around its pristine paintwork like envious spirits. The driver's door opened. A tall, imposing man in an immaculate charcoal gray suit stepped out. He moved with an air of unshakable authority, his eyes hidden behind designer sunglasses. He surveyed the scene, his gaze lingering for a moment on Elara, crouched and insignificant on the step, before turning toward the house's front door. Aunt Patricia, alerted by the unprecedented sound, had already flung the door open. Her expression, usually one of permanent dissatisfaction, was now a mask of bewildered curiosity mixed with a sudden, avaricious hope. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice an octave higher than usual. The man removed his sunglasses, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes. "I am looking for the residence of the late Thomas Mbeki." "This is it," Patricia said, puffing out her chest slightly. "I am his sister, Patricia Mbeki, the lady of the house now." "My name is Mr. Elara," he said, with a slight formal nod. "I am the personal assistant to Mr. Alistair Thorne." The name hung in the air, heavy with significance. Even Elara, in her isolated world, knew it. The Thornes. Their name was woven into the very fabric of the nation. Charles Thorne, the patriarch, was a mining magnate, a legend from the old era of immense wealth and power. His son, Alistair, was the new guard, a tech billionaire, an innovator, a frequent feature in business magazines and society pages. He was whispered about, a figure of almost mythical status. "Alistair Thorne?" Patricia breathed, her hand fluttering to her chest. "The Alistair Thorne?" "Indeed," Mr. Elara replied smoothly. "Mr. Thorne's father and your late brother, Thomas, had a professional relationship many years ago. Mr. Thorne Sr. held Mr. Mbeki in very high regard. The young Mr. Thorne is currently touring new community outreach initiatives his foundation is funding in the Western Cape. He wishes to pay his respects to the family, and, as a gesture of his father's esteem, would like to extend an invitation." He produced 2 thick, cream-colored envelopes from his inside pocket. They were sealed with a crest of dark red wax. "This is an invitation to the annual Thorne Foundation Charity Gala, held at the Four Seasons Hotel in town next Saturday evening. All expenses will, of course, be covered. Mr. Thorne very much hopes you will attend."
Patricia snatched the envelopes from his hand as if they were solid gold. Her mind was racing, calculations spinning behind her eyes. A gala. Town. The Thornes. This was it. This was the golden ticket she had been waiting for her entire life. This was the path out of Township for her and her daughters. "Oh, we would be honored," she gushed. "Absolutely honored. Please tell Mr. Thorne we accept with deepest gratitude." It was at that moment that Chloe and Bianca, drawn by the commotion, appeared in the doorway. They had clearly been primping, their hair freshly done, their best casual outfits on display. Patricia saw her chance and seized it. "These are my daughters, Mr. Elara," she said, pushing them forward. "Chloe and Bianca, such refined girls. They've been educated at a proper school in the city. They'll be so looking forward to meeting Mr. Thorne and discussing, well, all the things important people discuss." Mr. Eara's eyes flickered over them, polite but unreadable. He gave another curt nod. "I shall inform Mr. Thorne. A car will be sent for you at 6 o'clock sharp. Good day." As he turned to leave, his gaze once again fell upon Elara, who had remained frozen during the entire exchange, a silent witness to the reshaping of her family's destiny, a destiny from which she was pointedly excluded. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met. Something in her quiet dignity, the intelligence in her gaze amidst her menial task, seemed to give him pause. But the moment passed. He got into the magnificent car and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and dreams in his wake. The second the car was out of sight, the house erupted. Chloe and Bianca were shrieking with excitement, already planning their outfits, their hair, their strategies for captivating the elusive billionaire.
Elara, her heart a conflicted storm of hope and despair, slowly rose to her feet. "Aunt Patricia?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The gala, will I—" Patricia's ecstatic expression vanished, replaced by a mask of pure contempt. She turned on Elara, her eyes narrowed to slits. "You?" She spat the word. "Don't be absurd. Look at you. You have coal dust under your nails and the stink of poverty on you. What would you do? Scrub the ballroom floor? You have nothing to wear, no manners, no conversation. You would humiliate us in front of the most powerful family in the city." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "Alistair Thorne is meant for a girl of refinement and beauty, like my daughters, not a ragged township mouse like you. You will stay here. You will make sure this house is spotless, you will prepare a meal for our return, and you will fix that leaking pipe in the kitchen. This is our chance, Elara, our chance, and I will not let you and your clumsy backward ways ruin it. Do you understand me?" The words were a physical blow. They stripped away the fragile hope, leaving only the familiar, aching emptiness. Elara simply nodded, her eyes downcast, the fight gone out of her. She was nothing. She would always be nothing. The week that followed was a special kind of torture. The house was filled with the rustle of shopping bags, the chatter of dress fittings, the acrid smell of hair relaxer and nail polish. Magazines featuring Alistair Thorne's photographed face were spread across the coffee table, his life, his likes, his world studied like a sacred text. Elara was run ragged, fetching and carrying, altering hems, polishing shoes until her arms ached, all for an event she was forbidden to attend.
The night before the gala, as her cousins practiced walking in high heels on the uneven concrete floor, and Aunt Patricia fretted over jewelry, Elara retreated to her room. The weight of her isolation was crushing. She felt the ghost of her parents keenly, the unfairness of it all a bitter taste in her mouth. It was then, seeking solace, that she pulled an old, dusty hat box from the very top of her tiny cupboard. It was one of the few things of her mother's that Patricia hadn't claimed or sold. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that crackled with age, was a dress. It was her mother's evening gown, a creation of deep, vibrant emerald green. It was simply cut, but the fabric was heavy and rich, shot through with subtle gold thread that caught the dim light of her single bulb. It was timeless. Nestled beside it was a small beaded clutch bag. Inside, Elara found a pair of elegant gold sandals with a low, sensible heel and a delicate gold necklace with a single, small diamond pendant. Tears welled in her eyes as she held the dress to her chest. It still carried the faint, ghostly scent of her mother's perfume. It was a sign. A reckless, dangerous, intoxicating idea began to form in her mind. An act of defiance. She would not go as Elara the servant, but she could go as Sarah and Becky's daughter. The day of the gala arrived. The house was a frenzy of last-minute panic and excitement. The hired car, a sleek Mercedes, arrived precisely at 6. Aunt Patricia, swathed in a too large sequin dress, and her daughters, in brightly colored, overly elaborate gowns, bustled out, a cloud of cheap perfume trailing behind them. Patricia shot a final threatening glare at Elara. "Remember, the toilet, and we'd better not find a speck of dust." The sound of the car faded into the distance. Silence descended upon the house. Elara stood alone in the sudden quiet, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was her moment. She rushed to her room, pulled the hidden money from its secret spot, a few hundred rand, her entire savings. She changed into her least faded dress, grabbed the hot box, and ran.
She took a minibus taxi to the city center, her nerves stretched taut. In the ladies' room of a large department store, she transformed herself. A kind shop assistant, seeing her desperation, helped her with her hair, styling her natural curls into an elegant updo. Another helped with her makeup. Finally, hidden in a bathroom stall, she put on the emerald dress. It fit as if it had been made for her. The gold sandals were a perfect fit. She clasped the necklace around her neck, the diamond a cool, reassuring weight against her skin. Staring at her reflection in the smudged mirror, she barely recognized herself. The girl from the township was gone. In her place stood a woman of poise and quiet beauty, her eyes bright with a mixture of terror and exhilarating hope. The journey to the Four Seasons Hotel was a blur. She used almost all her remaining money for a taxi, her stomach churning with nausea. The hotel was a palace of light and glass, a world of unimaginable opulence. Swallowing her fear, she walked through the automatic doors, her head held high. The ballroom was a breathtaking spectacle. 1,000 crystals glittered from chandeliers the size of small cars. Women in diamonds and silk laughed behind flutes of champagne. The air hummed with the sound of money and influence. For a moment, Elara was utterly paralyzed, a sparrow that had flown into a king's hall. She wanted to turn and run. She found a quiet corner near a towering ice sculpture and a table laden with refreshments, her hands trembling slightly. She simply watched, absorbing the surreal scene, trying to make herself invisible. It was then that she saw him, Alistair Thorne. He was taller than she'd imagined, and younger, perhaps in his late 20s. He was undeniably handsome, with sharp, clean features, dark hair swept back from a high forehead, and a confident posture. But it was his eyes that captivated her. Even from across the room they seemed intelligent, but also weary. He was surrounded by a rotating court of sycophants and socialites, shaking hands, accepting compliments, but his smile never quite reached his eyes. He looked, she thought, profoundly bored. She watched as her aunt and cousins descended upon him. Patricia was simpering, pushing a giggling Chloe and then a preening Bianca towards him. He was polite, shaking their hands, nodding, but his body language was closed off, distant. He extracted himself from them with a smooth efficiency that spoke of long practice, and moved through the crowd, looking, it seemed to Elara, for an escape. His path, coincidentally, led him directly to her quiet corner. He was almost upon her before he seemed to notice her. He stopped, his weary eyes flickering with a spark of surprise. Here was someone not vying for his attention, not trying to sell him something. Here was a woman of stunning, understated beauty in a classic dress, watching the world with a calm, observant intelligence. He picked up 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter and approached her. "Hiding from the vultures?" he asked, his voice a warm, low baritone that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. He offered her one of the glasses. Startled, Elara looked up, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. Her fear momentarily forgotten, a wry smile touched her lips. "Perhaps we are hiding from the same flock," she replied, her voice softer and more melodic than the shrilled chatter that filled the room. He laughed, a genuine, surprised sound. "Touché. I'm Alistair." "I know who you are," she said, taking the glass. "Everyone does." "And you are—" he prompted. She panicked. She couldn't give her real name. "Just a guest," she said evasively. He didn't press it. Instead, he leaned against the table beside her, seemingly content to hide out with this mysterious woman. "And what does just a guest think of all this?" he asked, gesturing vaguely at the extravagant room.
And so she told him, Not her story, but her thoughts. She spoke of the dissonance, the immense wealth in this room against the poverty just miles away in the townships. She spoke of community, of the vibrant art and spirit of the people, things no business report could ever capture. She talked about the importance of real, grassroots change, not just charity checks. She was insightful, witty, and passionate, her words flowing from a place of authentic experience. Alistair Thorne was utterly captivated. For the first time all evening, perhaps all year, he was having a real conversation. She wasn't impressed by his money. She challenged his ideas. She made him think. He found himself telling her about his own frustrations, his desire to move beyond his father's legacy and create something truly meaningful, his sense of being trapped in a gilded cage of expectations. They talked for what felt like minutes, but was, in reality, over an hour. The world around them faded into a blur. He was fascinated by her mystery, her grace, her mind. Meanwhile, across the ballroom, Aunt Patricia was fuming. Alistair Thorne had brushed off her daughters after 2 minutes and had spent the entire evening engrossed in conversation with some unknown woman in a green dress. Who was she? Some unknown socialite stealing their prize? It was intolerable. A sudden fear lanced through Elara. The clock was ticking. Her aunt would be looking for her. The magic was about to end. I have to go, she said abruptly, setting her glass down. So soon, Alistair said, genuine disappointment in his voice. But I don't even know your name. It's better that way, she said softly, her heart breaking a little. Thank you for the conversation, Mr. Thorne. It was the most real thing that's happened to me in a long time.
And before he could say another word, she turned and melted into the crowd, moving with a swift, desperate grace. She didn't look back. She fled the ballroom, her heart hammering, grabbed her clutch from the coat check, and ran out into the cool night air. She had just enough money left for a long, terrifying minibus ride home, arriving just minutes before the hired Mercedes was due to return. She scrambled out of the emerald dress, hiding it away, wiping the makeup from her face and pulling on her old nightclothes. She was back in her role, breathless and trembling, when her aunt and cousins burst through the door, their faces thunderous. That nobody! Patricia seethed, throwing her shawl onto a chair. Some little gold digger in a green dress, clinging to him all night. He barely looked at my girls. Chloe and Bianca nodded in sullen agreement, their evening ruined. Patricia's eyes fell on Elara, who was pretending to straighten a cushion. And you, I hope you've been productive. This night was a disaster, and it's put me in a terrible mood. The bathroom better be shining. Elara simply nodded, saying nothing. But inside, she was glowing. She had stolen a piece of the night for herself. She had talked to him as an equal, and he had seen her, not the servant, but the woman. It was a secret she would hold close, a tiny, brilliant diamond of a memory to sustain her through the endless gray days to come. She had no idea that the night was far from over, and that the consequences of her bravery were only just beginning.